name is Dave Reske, CEO of Now Speed Marketing, and welcome to this edition of In the Now, where we focus on covering the myths and misunderstandings of marketing and leadership with some of the world's most interesting people. And today my guest is Pete Hayes. Pete is a principal at Chief Outsiders. Pete, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, David. Great to be here.
Pete co-directs a tribe of world-class executive-as-a-service marketers to accelerate growth for clients with infusions of instant senior marketing talent. He's also the co-author of The Growth Gears with Art Saxby. Wow, that's quite an introduction I got from your website. That's an amazing description
that sounds
of
like
your
a
company.
bunch of marketing speak. Yeah, we're gonna have to fix that.
You must be a good marketer. I love that. I love the part, the infusions of instant senior marketing talent. That's a pretty cool description of what Chief Outsiders does, right?
You know, it really happens that way. I mean, we'll get a call from a private equity firm on a Thursday, and we'll drop somebody in. I remember like Bass Pro Shops; they'd lost their CMO of digital, and boom, Monday they end up with this rock star digital CMO, and so it does happen really quickly.
That's great. Well, you've got a ton of experience to share. I'm interested in your experiences with Chief Outsiders, with some of the principles you've thought about your book, a lot of your other experiences. So we get a lot to talk about. But as you know, I like to start these conversations with what I call a Mythbuster question. And one of the topics that was really powerful in your book was this idea that the myth is the idea that the best run companies will grow the fastest. And why is that a myth, and what is the reality there?
Well, we did some research with the University of Texas, and there's really two different kinds of companies, and it all has to do with their leadership. And there's operationally oriented companies, and there's market-driven companies. And it turns out that the operationally oriented companies, they run really great companies, but they don't grow as fast as the market-driven companies, who, by the way, may not make money right away. So high growth companies are the ones that know how to align the company with the realities of the marketplace, and they may not be the best run company. That might come later, or they might need to buy that help.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. So how bad does a company have to be run, or how good does a company have to be run in order to still be a market-driven company and survive and grow? I mean, they got to be doing some things right to be a high growth company, right?
Yeah, well, to be a high growth company, you do have to execute on what you see in the marketplace as opportunities. But operationally driven companies will tend to be very inwardly focused. They're very efficiency driven. They might, frankly, be good at driving profit, but they tend to rise and fall with their industry peers. So, when there's a recession coming, it's just, hanker down and ride it out. A market-driven company will look for, gaps and changes and shifts. And this happened during COVID. You saw companies, I mean, look at the restaurant business. Some very similar restaurants were successful and quickly pivoting. I know of a very high-end restaurant that you would thought there's no way they're going to survive on takeout, but they completely reformatted their menu to family packs. And as a result, they had a takeout business that kept them alive. And so companies that can see the shifts, be market focused rather just internally operationally focused. I'll give you another example. During COVID, what was really common with private equity backed companies was take the keys away from the CEO and hand them to the CFO. It's time to conserve cash, make no investment, right? Like so many businesses, our business had an immediate 30% drop, and was not uncommon during April of 20. And yet we came out of the year with 20% growth in the COVID year. We re-messaged our business multiple times. I think it was 4 times during 20 as different stages of the pandemic happened. We did crazy things like buy one, get one. We knew nobody wanted to drop in a long-term fractional CMO, make that decision right in the middle of COVID. That was too risky because you couldn't see that far around the corner. But everybody knew they needed help. So what about a month of help? If you buy a month, we'll give you the second month. And that turned out to be a great way for people to experience the value of a fractional chief marketing officer, even if it was just on a project basis.
Wow, that's really creative. Well, let's dig into all those ideas a little bit further. So,
Sure.
operationally oriented companies and market driven companies. Since we're both marketers, let's assume, or maybe we'll talk about this, that market driven is better. But wait, let's take a step back. Maybe is market driven really better? Is there a better here, and is market driven better than operationally oriented?
So the research that we did, it wasn't actually a new discovery. I got all excited, but the professors at the business school at University of Texas, they were going, no, that's already, we already know that there's two different kinds of organizations. But what we did find, and what was new, is that there were a portion of the operationally driven companies, the well-run companies, that also had learned the disciplines of market-oriented behaviors, right? And those companies grew faster than their industry peers, but they were also operationally excellent. So it's really, you want the best of both worlds. It was only 20% of the operationally oriented companies, but they had the best of both worlds. They were well run and they grew faster than their industry peers.
Okay, so you don't want to be poorly run and market oriented. You want to be well run and market oriented. But I bet there's a case for some, and we probably see them in the news, for poorly run market-driven companies that explode and do really well. But I guess we don't want to aspire to that. But I guess it's better than being poorly run and have poor marketing, right?
Right.
Which is the worst of both worlds.
Well, and remember, marketing, just even the word, there's not another discipline in the C-suite that's probably so, I'd say misunderstood might be a little rough, but certainly defined differently. Every person's, and of course we're home, every person's definition of marketing is going to be different. Do we want to stop this?
No, let's just keep going. Okay. Let's reality happens. Dogs happen.
All right. We'll come meet my dog Jazz later. Maybe he'll come in here and say hello.
Yeah. What kind of dog do you have?
He's a Lhasa Poo. He's a rescue dog. We rescued him from our daughter that with 3 kids was not able to give him enough attention. So anyway, it's an internal rescue dog and he's wonderful.
That's so cool. Yeah. Hopefully he'll join you on your lap in just a few minutes. Is he small enough to be on your lap, or is he just...
Yeah, he doesn't like to sit up, and he doesn't enjoy Zoom calls. He
doesn't do. Yeah. There is I just, not to digress too far, I just saw a cute video with 2 dogs that fell in love over Zoom, and they do these video calls back and forth. Look it up on YouTube. It's a blast. It's so funny.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
It's funny. Anyway, coming back to marketing, and I think that's a really important insight, that marketing is a very misunderstood profession and a very misunderstood function in the C-suite. Talk to me a little bit about, we've been talking about market-driven companies. What's the difference between doing marketing and being market-driven?
So, and you've had a look at our book, marketing really breaks out into these 3 things. There's insight into the marketplace and getting alignment into the realities of the marketplace, understanding your competitors, customers, the marketplace as a whole, even your business and how it fits and how it makes money. That's an insight thing. Then there's this strategy thing. There's decisions that get made based upon those realities around how you're going to market, distribution channels, how you're going to organize your sales functions and so forth. And come on, Jazz, come on in here, man. And how you do positioning, how you do pricing, those decisions are in the strategy realm. We call it the strategy gear. And then there's execution. And that's what most of us think of when we think of marketing. We think of the campaigns and the programs and metrics, tactics, resources, and so forth. So when most people say marketing, they really are thinking of the go-to-market side of marketing. They're thinking of taking the products, introducing them into the marketplace. And some people will say, oh, you're convincing customers to buy and all that sort of thing. And there's truth to that. But if you look at a university, for example, like you look at the business school at the University of Texas, there's people that get their MBAs in marketing. And I will always ask when I'm talking to CEOs, I'll say, so what percent of that group of marketing MBAs will go work like in an ad agency? And then we'll go, I don't know, all of them? And I'll go, no, the answer is 0% of those MBAs will go work in an agency. They'll actually go become a brand manager for a packaged goods company. They may get hired by one of the big 4 consulting firms. but they will look at that broad spectrum of marketing versus the person that gets their MBA over in the communication school and advertising communications. They all go work for ad agencies, right, or start their own business in that realm, and they're focused on the execution. Not that there isn't strategic things that feed that execution, but they're not focused on the whole: product definition, product fit, features, pricing. They're not interested. Well, they're not tasked with that typically. And sure enough, companies organize in one way or another, right? Where marketing is brochures on the website and lead gen, or marketing is tasked with growth and profitability for the company. And it turns out only 17% of organizations are organized in a way where marketing is actually responsible for growth. But those companies do grow faster than their peers.
Yeah, that's a really important distinction. So, I run a digital agency, of course, and we execute these campaigns. And so interesting. So where we can be very successful is where the client has done a great job defining the strategy. They've got a product with a great product fit. They know exactly where they're going. They understand that. And sometimes they engage us to help them figure out that piece. But that might be a small project and give them some insight. But mainly we're about execution. But if they don't have that insight and that strategy figured out, no amount of execution will work well, or it will be incredibly expensive to work well. So and we can measure that often in the effectiveness of a campaign. The campaign, and it's a simple metric like a cost per lead could be an order of magnitude higher. Could be $100 a lead versus $1,000 a lead if the strategy and the positioning is not thought through well. So there's incredible value in that. Is that what you're finding?
That's exactly it. In fact, that's when agencies bring us in. It might seem like, well, wait a minute, why would an agency bring in a fractional CMO? Well, it's because they know they can't get their work done, and they might be frustrated. They may not have access to the C-suite itself. You might be working with a VP of sales or a VP of marketing that just doesn't have that experience and those chops. Jazz is here now. So say hi, Jazz.
No.
You're a good fellow, right? Okay. So yeah, that can happen. It's interesting that you exactly said the word that's on the outside of what we call the execution gear, and it's efficiency. Anybody can execute marketing programs. Anybody can buy the best executional resources in an agency and spend money and buy a Super Bowl ad and whatever. But is that going to be the most cost effective? Is going to be efficient use of those funds, or even the resources within an organization? We just got hired by a large mega church in Central Texas. And the insight from the senior pastor, this is a big church, huge resources. Their staff is so large, I couldn't even get to the bottom of it, paging down on their website. But they were frustrated because with the 6 campuses they have multiple different kinds of audience, incredible complexity in the different ways that their programs and events are consumed. And the senior pastor was frustrated, not that they couldn't get people to attend the events and special programs and such that they had, but he said it's taken way too much energy. And I thought, damn, that's incredibly insightful for him to recognize that. And the task was to come in, assess our organization, our processes, even the technology platforms we have, which they know were fairly outdated, which, by the way, is a super common thing we should probably talk about. Is people, companies' tech platforms, they age out and they kind of get refreshed and updated. But to get those things right, so execution happens most efficiently, and it's not always just dollars. Sometimes it's people too.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the way that you said that efficiency. Sometimes I heard recently a definition of elegance. And it was like when your business is elegant, it gets the most done with the least amount of resources. It just feels natural. It's just happening. And it strikes me that is a way to think of a market-driven organization. When you kind of find that vein that's really working, good things can happen quickly with less effort. But it strikes me also that that's very difficult to do in a very competitive world that we live in, where there are how many different, products in every category and services in every category. So how do you from a strategic perspective, get the C-suite, and this is where your folks live, to think market-driven versus operationally driven? How do you kind of get them into that mindset first of all?
Well, they discover it through challenging questions
Mm,
as much as anything. And the realities are when we get dropped into a business, we know for the toughest growth challenges, the answers are upstream, right? They're in the market insight places, typically where so many of the answers are. But we'll often have to do some triage on the execution side. Are there some quick fixes, low hanging fruit, things that just need to, and so you build some credibility there. I remember with one company, it was a 100-year-old manufacturer, and it took the CMO a year to finish the triage and execution before she moved upstream and was able to now had the credibility as well and did the market studies for them to understand they're going to need to change their routes to market. They hadn't changed their routes to market for 100 years, had the same sort of manufacturer rep scenario. And they realized because of some of to do with technology and just the buying habits of their customers, there were multiple routes to market that they needed to take, which were going to improve margins significantly. And they were able to make those hugely strategic changes. So some of it's, finding those little things, those little proof points. One of the most dramatic things you can do is, and you may do this in your business, you can, list all of the competitors' messaging and then have the executive team try to figure out whose is what. And it's usually an interesting exercise. They often can't pick out their own company, let alone get any alignment around competitors. And they all look the same. So they realize they're going to have to be more distinctive. So that's an interesting exercise. And there's others. Just guiding an executive team to recognize where they have differences of opinion, where they're just not all aligned, and helping them through different exercises and workshops figure out what their priorities are and why. A lot of companies don't really have a growth strategy. I mean, they might have multiple initiatives. They often have too many. I'm thinking of one company, they had 8 things going on and we got it down to 3. And the employees took this deep breath. Oh, thank you so much, because they had one of these CEO chairmans that had an idea every day and kept spinning these things up, and the company just wasn't large enough to swallow it. So sometimes it's just focus.
Yeah, I can imagine the focus is a big part of what you do, and really a big part of what it takes to become that market-driven company. It feels like in marketing, there's just one of the things that we struggle with is that there's just so many things you could do, and if you get a CEO or a CMO who's constantly spinning up new things, sometimes you can't really give any one thing the chance to really work and figure out if it's working. So imagine a big part of becoming market-driven is really trying to decide on the best things to do. As you were saying, the things that you were trying during COVID, you were able to try things quickly and iterate and keep the business moving forward. But that's hard to do with big companies, with big budgets, with lots of people, with thinking that through.
It is, and it's a theory that I have that it's one of the reasons why there's so much turnover in the CMO job, and everybody talks about what the number is, and it's moving, but it's not good. It's the most volatile seat in the C-suite, right? But I believe, and what I've observed is when a new CMO comes into a large, it's a multi-billion-dollar company, they'll do the strategic work, especially as it relates to understanding the company, the competitive set, where the products fit, and they end up bringing some fresh insight into the business, no question. But by the second year, they're so tangled up in execution and trying to prove out some theorems and such that they have, that the market can have shifted. And the whole notion of insight, strategy, and execution, the whole notion of the rigor of being market-driven and market-oriented is that you're constantly going back to the well. You're constantly, and digital, this probably makes the most sense, because in our digital campaigning, for example, it's like, man, AdWords is it, right? AdWords is the ticket, and then it's not, right? It's not the ticket because the cost per click went up 5x because of competitive activity. And what's the next thing? Oh, well, now LinkedIn, that is the bomb, right? That's the thing. And the cheese just keeps moving. You just have to keep going back to say, what's changed, what's new? And that's not quite the same thing as market driven, but it is a demonstration of having to be nimble, because what worked yesterday doesn't work tomorrow, right?
Yeah, and it points out an interesting thing, because you can be market driven at every level, right? At the lowest level, you've got a person who is, in our world, let's say it's SEO, and you're writing content to get keyword visibility, so you can get more traffic, so maybe you can get more leads or more sales. And at that basic level, you're trying to find out what content is working, what the messages are, what the what's working for keywords. And then that person is trying to figure that out and being market driven. But at the senior level, you're trying to figure out what is the pricing strategy, what are the competitors doing? And it takes thinking about it, creating a marketing organization that's market driven at every level. Is that kind of
I think you're exactly right. And it ends up being, when it's done thoroughly, to your point, then the discussions you have, you're not brainstorming ideas that aren't based on some insight. You say, well, we're noticing this, let's consider that. That's a lot better than, hey, I had this idea last night, or I was talking to my spouse, and hey, why don't we name it this? Well, and then you might back up and say, oh yeah, that seems to align with some insight that we've done. But I like your exactly your notion. It can happen at every level of decision making in an organization.
So if you're the CMO, how do you create a culture where that kind of change and that change and the becoming, let me take a step back, becoming market driven from top to bottom requires people who are thinking and gaining insight and innovating. And that takes a lot of trust and a culture where you can trust people and give people flexibility to be able to do that without fearing for their jobs. Because if I spent money on this ad campaign and it didn't work because I thought it was going to work, but it didn't work, I might get fired. So, or I've changed something big and it broke something else. And so there's a lot of things that can go wrong when you're creating that change. And you can I've seen CMOs come into some of our clients like a bull in a china shop, and they just throw out the old and they bring in the new. Oh, the new didn't work. Shoot, we got to throw out the new, and we got to bring in the new.
And then they get thrown out.
And then they get thrown out and they get a new CMO. And then, 5 years later, maybe we're
rinse and repeat.
we're like we have more institutional learning than anybody else, and we're doing this little thing. So it's a strange culture, but how do you build a culture that can be market driven, from top to bottom?
Yeah. Well, it's non-trivial, right? And it's based on result. I mean, everybody gets a hall pass until they don't, and so it has to end up in result, and and tangible benefits. Whether it's growth or whatever the thing you're trying to solve, leads improvement, revenue improvement, customer longevity, lifetime customer value, share of wallet, whatever you're trying to go fix, that is going to be kind of the growth driver. But it's frankly, it's one of the reasons why we think we're doing as well as we are as a business, is because our CMOs, if they get let go from a gig, if they say the wrong thing, so they will step into the danger, as Patrick Lencioni will say, they will step into the danger and share the kind truth when it needs to be shared. Because if somebody blows up and says, well, that means we're not in alignment, get out of here. Well, their kids are still going to go to college, right? I mean, they've got other clients, they've got other places they're going to go. So they can be more forthcoming with the truth and with what actually needs to get done, and step away from political things. And that's a huge step. I mean, to your point of, gosh, I don't want to take the risk of running that campaign, because if it doesn't work, I'm going to get fired. But the other thing that we've learned, and not all of our CMOs were as good at this in their corporate, enterprise jobs, which most people came from larger businesses, but they've learned that their best friend is the CFO. And you can have two orientations to a CFO. That's the person that's just trying to squeeze profit out of everything, and so cut costs anywhere you can. But that's really not their orientation. Their orientation is, where do I put money where the business is going to get the return? And that's sometimes in capital investments, sometimes it's in people, sometimes it's in marketing and sales initiatives. They just want line of sight to working investments. So when our CMOs are doing their best work, they have a set of initiatives that have that. So it's not just an ad campaign for an ad campaign. It's an initiative tied to a strategic objective, and often it'll have a percent of the, say, the overall marketing budget allocated to it, and a percent contribution to the growth vector that initiative is going to make. And sometimes there can be a dozen of these things on a piece of paper. Initiative to introduce this new product, and you're going to put 20% of your marketing budget in it, even though it's only going to produce 5% of growth. Well, why would you do that? Well, because it's hugely strategic for 5 years down the road. We really want to enter this smaller market with this new product that we have. And another initiative might be, maintaining our current customer base, and that's responsible for 60% of your revenue. But it may only take 10% of your marketing budget because it's a maintenance investment. And if you have that kind of a program laid out, and you sit down with a CFO every quarter and provide an update, well, this is on track, this one's not, I think we ought to shift some spending this way. You're having a business discussion about where to make the right bets and how to reallocate investments. And that's what they want to have. I mean, if there's incompetency, then that's another story. But to have that level of transparency, but frankly, business acumen to map initiatives to business strategy, strategic vectors, and then specific outcomes based upon that investment is a huge discipline.
Yeah, that is so powerful. And you're absolutely right. Being market driven, you have to focus on results, on what actually works, right? And it sounds like your people are experts not only thinking about those insights and strategy and execution, but mapping every one of those levels to the results that they're focused on. And ultimately, you have to win. One of our themes this year at NowSpeed is playing to win. And it's kind of a simple concept, but a lot of people play to play. And it sounds like your team really plays to win. They're focused on the right metrics that the CEO and the CFO care about, and they're executing to hit those things, not just to do them for their own sake.
Yeah, and you bring something to mind. Some businesses will, gosh, we've been doing this 20 years, and we just we're stuck at this certain revenue level. And what's your vision for growth? Well, we just want to grow as much as we can. Well, I mean, do you have a target? I mean, you're 20 million today. Is the goal to be 100 million in 10 years? Oh, that would be great. I go, well, but is that what the company is going to march to? Do you make decisions, that are, I mean, and employees meet so many companies, and the employers go, we don't know what, we just come to work and try to do a little bit better every day. And that seems like that might be a better environment for employees, but it's not. They want to take a hill. They want a leader that says, it's not good enough where we are. This is not good enough. There's too much market opportunity. There's too many customers that need what we do. And sometimes that might be a very, important thing. Maybe you're in the solar panel business, and we're going to save the planet. There's more people that need our product that they don't know the benefit. They don't know the cost effectiveness of a solution. And we've got to, we can't stay here. We've got to be 5x, 10x, 100x. And this is what it's going to look like in the future. Yes, your jobs are going to get better. We're going to grow this organization. We're a national firm. Then we're going international. Whatever those vectors are. So somebody says this company's going someplace, and then there's bumps, right? And you go, well, we had a setback, so we're going to do this now. We're going to make this change. Or I'm sorry, we had to do a layoff. We haven't given up on our vision, but we're still going to grow. Or whatever that is. But the leadership, when they avoid that or just kind of get comfortable, it's not as much fun to work there. And for they're shocked when you try to stay steady. You're gonna, if you're not growing, you're not only you you're usually at the risk of, losing your market position, because the market's going to change. And if you're not going to try to change with it and grow with new opportunities, then, you can be in a world of hurt. And another thing is some companies get, hey, well, we grew, it's great. We grew that 8% last year, but they're in a market that's growing 30%. And so, so you become less and less relevant, so it is a huge opportunity to be a market leader in any company. And what companies that I think are the most successful, they find that spot that, at least for now, they're going to lead this part of the business. I mean, can you imagine if Amazon, when they launched, said, we're going to be the world distributor in every product, not only to consumers, but to businesses. And by the way, have this cloud platform that everybody else runs on because we're so good at our IT. No, they were an online bookseller. And then they became the best online bookseller. And then they innovated in the Prime program is an incredible instance of market insight and great analysis on lifetime value. And so all of a sudden, shipping was going to be free, and then shipping was going to be 2 days, and then shipping was going to be same day, which was insane when the distribution centers start showing up in your town. Anyway, you'll get me cranked up here, David.
There's so many benefits to being market driven and then executing well on that. So I think this has been a really challenging conversation, Pete. I think there's a lot of companies out there that are not thinking as strategically as you are and your team is. And I think that there's a lot of challenging ideas here that would really help companies reevaluate how they're going to market, what insights they're gaining, what strategies they're executing, how they're operating. And that's the fun thing, I guess, about marketing is it's changing all the time. We can make a huge impact on companies and people's lives. And are you having fun doing what you're doing still?
Yeah. And that's the question to everyone, right? Yeah. Including the owner of a business. And sometimes they go, oh, this is just such a slog and I just can't wait to get out of it. And sometimes you have to remind them, well, let's get rid of the stuff you don't like. Let's move that over here, move that over here. And what do you really like to do? And sometimes, believe it or not, a CMO can help solve those kinds of things as well and keep a company cranking along.
Yeah.
Would it help? You mentioned our book, and I'd be, if folks want to write in and for a copy, I'll, first 20 folks I hear from, I'll have someone send them a copy of the book. Would that be helpful?
That would be awesome, and I'll put that in our LinkedIn post as we promote this. That's awesome. If people want to get in touch with you or Chief Outsiders and learn more about your services, how would they do that?
Yeah, the website's obvious, chiefoutsiders.com. I'm easy too, Pete@chiefoutsiders.com. So pretty simple.
Perfect. Great conversation, Pete. Thank you very much for taking the time. This has been really challenging for me, and I think it's going to help a lot of people.
You're welcome. And Jazz says goodbye to everybody as well.
All right. Bye, Jazz. Enjoy your day. Take care.
Thanks, Dave.